以下节目是由东华医院特约播映。各位觀眾，歡迎收睇《商界中環》，我係 Mina 李適平。喺呢一節嘅《商界中環》呢，我哋將會同大家介紹下呢個東華醫院嘅歷史。咁我相信華人社區呢，就好多人呢都聽過下呢個東華醫院，但可能好多人呢就唔係好清楚東華醫院其實佢有好長嘅歷史。咁今日呢，我哋就好榮幸咁邀請到華人保健計劃嘅首席行政長Larry Lu 嚟到節目當中。Hi Larry。
Hi， 你好。
係歡迎嚟到呢個商界中環。So I would like to ask you about what is the history of Chinese hospital? How did it start?
Well, the history of Chinese hospital is actually a very long one, and it's very important to not just our Chinese community, but also San Francisco. So it started back in the early 1800s when there were a lot of Chinese, but they didn't have access to sort of more modern Western medicine. They had access to traditional Chinese medicine, but they had a very difficult time getting access to more modern medicine because of discrimination. So the community raised funds and created what's called the Donghua Dispensary, and that was built in 1899. That was built by community organizations and also some Western trained physicians. So that was put in on Sacramento Street. I think the location is where now where Chinese Playground is, right about there. And that served to the community until about 1906. And in 1906, obviously, the whole place burned down.
Oh, that was the San Francisco earthquake.
Right, the great 06 earthquake. And so once that burned down, the community actually faced a really difficult time in its existence there. There were a lot of people that wanted to run the Chinese out of Chinatown at the time. So very quickly, the community got together, rebuilt the entire place. More importantly, they also built the Donghua Dispensary now on Trenton Alley, which is just north of Washington Street and where Stockton Street is. So the community continued to grow. The Donghua Dispensary thrived, and more updated medicine and technology was created in the early teens. And that's where the community started to think about what they needed to do to provide for more care for the community. So at that point in time, there was still a lot of discrimination, and it was also still very difficult for the community, the people in the community, to get access to places like San Francisco General Hospital. So even though they paid for taxes, they had a tough time being seen by doctors there. So the community got together. There were about 15 community organizations. They got together and founded the Chinese Hospital Association. So they raised money. They started in 1923, and by 1925, they actually opened up the hospital to serve the community.
咁咧就呢個東華醫院咧就係其實咧就真係歷史好悠久，就係1899年咧就已經成立咗呢個叫做東華診所。咁佢嘅英文名咧就係由呢個東華 Dispensary 改咗做Chinese Hospital， 但係咧就如果中文名嚟講咧就係東華診所，改咗做東華醫院。咁其實咧就佢1899年嗰陣時，因為當其時咧就即係呢個美國社會咧就對華人好歧視啦，咁咧就華人咧就好多時咧就冇得睇醫生嘅，咁所以點解咧就佢哋成立咗呢個東華診所，咁咧就等好多啲唐人咧就可以嚟到呢個東華診所咧就睇醫生。咁喺1906年嘅三藩市大地震當中咧就呢個東華診所咧就係完全係摧毀咗嘅。咁後尾咧就即係嗰個社區咧又再集資啦。咁因為當其時連嗰啲咩聯合醫院啊，即係嗰啲咧都唔收任何唐人嘅病人。咁所以佢哋集資喺1925年咧就正式開啟咗呢個東華醫院。So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's perfect.
So yeah, so giving birth to it was 1925. Could you tell us about what happened at 1925?
So the community got together to raise money for this new hospital. Keep in mind that the technology in terms of healthcare really improved. I mean, I think if you think about it, they started having, for example, penicillin, or hospitals became places where people were healed, not just where they go and for the end of life. And so the community grew, and the community leaders thought that it was important that there was a place for the community to actually have access to that care, and places for healing. And so the 1925 building was, pretty modest relative to current terms, but it served the community for quite some time, where people were, living there and being served there. So
yeah， 咁正如阿 Larry 所講咧，就1925年咧就呢個東華診所咧就正式咧就改名咧就成為咗東華醫院。咁佢唔單止咧就係一個診所啦，就係一個醫院，就等大家咧就可以接受更加多嘅醫學方面嘅治療。So talking about the Chinese hospital, I think it was renovated several times. So in 1979, it was renovated again. Why?
Sure. So that 1925 building continued to exist until 1979. It continued to serve the community until that period in time. The reason for that is that why we needed to create the new 1979 hospital, back then that was the new hospital, is because the whole standards about what you put into hospitals, how much room you have to have, how much staff and that sort of thing, really changed the requirements. And quite frankly, the 1925 building almost had to get shut down. So they created the 1979 building to replace that, and that has been continuously open since then.
咁啊喺1979年咧，其實東華醫院咧就已經翻修過一次㗎啦。當然咧就今年4月咧就新嘅東華醫院咧就會誕生。咁1979年點解會翻新咧？就 Larry 咧就話，因為根據當時政府嘅條例，咁啊譬如話走廊通道又有幾闊啊，咁同埋當然有啲儀器啊，同埋有幾多個病床啊，呢啲咧就同1925年咧就嗰個年代咧就係爭好遠。咁當然你翻新咗之後咧，就成個醫院咧就當然可以更加好咁嘅樣服務呢個社區。咁而佢原本1925年嗰個醫院大樓咧，就當其時咧就愛咗嚟做呢個 office 嘅。So now, so what I understand, so both the office and the hospital got torn down, and then in April you're going to have the brand new Chinese hospital, right?
Not entirely quite right. So the 1925 building in 2012, Chinese hospital started a capital campaign to raise funds for this new hospital. So in the history of the 1925 building, the 1979 building, and now what is it going to be, the 2016 building, the community really raised money for the 1925 building and 79 building. So we actually, in 2012, we actually deconstructed the 1925 building, and so out of that is the new building that's going to be we'll be celebrating the grand opening in 2016. Meanwhile, right next door to it, the 1979 building continued to serve the patients and continued to be operational.
Oh, so the 1925 is the building that's torn down.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
咁原來咧就係1925年嗰個本身嗰個舊嗰個東華醫院個大樓咧就係重建嘅。咁1979年嗰個咧就繼續喺度繼續服務呢個社區嘅。咁我哋咧就今日多謝大家收睇呢個商界中環，下一節再見。